It was supposed to be the happiest day of my son Jason's life. I watched him in his tuxedo, standing at the altar, eyes sparkling with excitement, ready to marry the woman he'd been with for years, Emily. I had always thought that a father's job was to be there for his kids, especially on their wedding day. It was one of those moments in life that every parent looks forward to. You stand there, proud of the person they've become, knowing that your love and sacrifice have helped shape their future. But I couldn't have been more wrong, because that's when it happened. Right in the middle of the ceremony, Emily, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, turned to me with a look of utter disdain. It was as if I were a stranger, someone she wished had never been part of this day. "You're too poor for my wedding," she screamed, her voice cutting through the crowd like a knife. The words hit me harder than anything I could have imagined. "I don't want you here. You're embarrassing us." My heart sank into my stomach. I looked over at Jason, hoping that he would step in, defend me, say something, anything. But he stood there, frozen, not saying a word, not moving. The shock in his eyes said it all. He was ashamed of me. Emily wasn't done. She motioned toward the exit, eyes glaring at me. "Leave, now. You don't belong in this life. This is a celebration of us, not you." I stood there, numb. The guests at the wedding had gone quiet, unsure whether to intervene. The laughter, the music, the joy, it all stopped. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion, and yet the sting of her words was so real, so sharp, it left me breathless. I should have fought back. I should have shouted at her, told her that no one treats me like that. But I didn't. I smiled instead. I smiled like I was fine, even though I was crumbling inside. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Not today. Not in front of everyone. I turned, walked out of the hall, and never looked back. But what happened next, that's the part she'll never see coming. Have you ever been humiliated by someone you trusted? Feel free to comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? I didn't fight back. I didn't scream or plead for my son to stand by me. I just smiled. I walked away and I made one phone call. You see, that's where Emily made her mistake. She underestimated me. She thought she had control of everything. The wedding, the town's perception of her, even Jason. But she didn't know what I had up my sleeve. I had connections, powerful ones. People I'd helped in the past, people who owed me favors. All it took was one call to turn everything around. I'd lived in this small town long enough to know that everyone was just a few degrees of separation away from the truth. Emily's perfectly curated image, it was built on lies, and I was going to make sure everyone saw it. The call was simple. "Hey, Jack, it's Richie. I need a favor, a big one." Jack was an old friend from my days working construction. He'd made his wealth by making the right connections, the kind of connections that could tear someone's reputation apart without them even knowing it. He'd been in politics, in business, in places where the power was real. "You got it, Richie. What do you need?" "I need you to make sure the press gets the right story. I don't want Emily and her family hiding behind their wealth anymore. You know what to do." Jack's laugh echoed in my ear. "You're talking about ruining her life, aren't you?" I smiled. "Let's just say I'm giving her the opportunity to show the world who she really is." 30 days passed. The first article came out on a quiet Thursday. I hadn't expected it to blow up as quickly as it did, but it did. And from there, everything fell apart for Emily. The headline read, "Local wedding turns sour. Is Emily Walters really who she claims to be?" At first, Emily thought it was a minor inconvenience. She laughed it off, called it a smear campaign, and insisted that Jason ignore the noise. But soon, more articles followed. And then came the interviews. Secrets she'd spent years burying started to resurface. Her social media, once a platform for flaunting her perfect life, was flooded with comments. Some called her out for the excessive wedding costs, while others dug deeper into her family's business dealings. It didn't take long for the town to start whispering. What's she hiding? Why is Jason still with her? But it wasn't just Emily who was feeling the heat. Jason was right there with her, dragged into the mess she had made. His perfect little world was crumbling, and it was all because of one thing: Emily. Have you ever watched someone crumble from the top down? Comment below if you think Emily is getting what she deserves. But here's where the real twist comes in. Jason, my son, started to question everything. As the weeks went by, he grew distant from Emily. He started showing up to the local diner just to talk. We'd sit in silence, both of us feeling the weight of what was happening. "I don't know what to do, Dad," he said one night after his usual grilled cheese sandwich. That's when I knew the full extent of my plan had worked. I'd been patient, precise, and calculated. Emily had no idea that the web I'd spun around her had already closed in. She thought she was untouchable, but I'd made sure the truth would come out, all in good time. Jason was beginning to see through the facade, and I had no intention of stopping until the last piece fell into place. Comment below, would you have done the same as Richie, or would you have tried to fix things with your son? This was just the beginning. Emily had no idea how badly I was about to turn her life upside down. The real show was about to start, and when it did, no one would be laughing anymore. Before all of this, before Emily's betrayal and the humiliating scene at my son's wedding, my life had been simple. It wasn't glamorous. I didn't need it to be. My pride came from the quiet moments, the ones that made me feel grounded, the ones that made me feel like I mattered. I had built my life slowly but surely, brick by brick, from the ground up. A little construction company in Hartford, Connecticut, some good friends, and the love of my son. Jason and I spent weekends working together on the farm. Sure, it wasn't much. Just an old house on an acre of land, a garden full of vegetables and some chickens that I looked after, but it was ours. I'd wake up early, drink my coffee, and watch the sunrise over the fields, feeling like I had something that was mine, something real. I had worked hard for everything I had. I wasn't rich, but I had integrity. I took pride in being a man who could fix anything with his hands. My son was the one thing I could never fix, though, the one thing I always wanted to protect. Jason was my pride and joy. His mother, God rest her soul, and I had raised him with love, even when times were tough. He'd grown into a man who was smart, capable, and full of potential. Emily, though, she came into our lives like a storm. She was different from the other girls Jason had dated. I knew he was serious about her. He'd even started talking about marriage, and I could see why. Emily was everything he wanted. She was beautiful, polished, sophisticated. Her family had money, and I could tell Jason had been swept up by it. But there was something about her, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way she held herself, the way she looked at me with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. It made my skin crawl. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that father, the one who overreacts, who drives a wedge between his son and his happiness. I told myself I was being paranoid, overthinking it. Looking back, maybe I should have trusted my gut. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling, thinking it was nothing? Comment below. Do you think I should have listened to my instincts about Emily? The signs were there, though, subtle at first. Emily started pulling away from the family. She was always polite, but there was a coldness beneath her pleasantries. I noticed how she would change the subject whenever we tried to talk about anything that mattered. It was as if the life I had built, the life I was so proud of, wasn't enough for her. She wanted more than I could give. And that was when I started noticing how Jason changed too. He wasn't the same boy who'd spent weekends working alongside me in the fields. He was distant. His focus was on the wedding plans, on impressing Emily, on trying to meet her expectations. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't part of his world anymore. But I didn't protest. I kept quiet. He was becoming a man after all, and I didn't want to hold him back. Then came the wedding plans. I tried to stay involved, as a father should. I wanted to help. But Emily? She wasn't having it. She took control of everything. The venue, the guest list, the flowers, everything had to be perfect. She made sure everyone knew it. The more I tried to offer my help, the more she pushed me aside. "Dad, Emily's got it," Jason would say with that same distant look in his eyes. That hurt. More than anything, it hurt. But I told myself, this is her day. This is their day. I smiled, nodded, and kept my thoughts to myself. I never questioned it, never raised a fuss, but looking back, I realize I should have. I should have fought for my place in my own son's life, because it was clear that Emily wasn't just trying to marry my son, she was trying to take over. Do you ever feel like someone's trying to take something away from you? Comment below if you've ever felt left out in your own family. The wedding day arrived, and I did everything I could to push aside the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. The house was full of relatives, the guests were excited, and everything seemed perfect. Jason looked incredible, standing there at the altar, waiting for Emily to walk down the aisle. But then, as the ceremony progressed, something in me shifted. I don't know exactly when it happened, but I felt the change, a shift in the air, like a storm was coming. I saw Emily standing at the front, her perfect smile, the way she held herself like she was the queen of everything. I felt like I was no longer part of the picture. She was the star now, and me? I was just the old man in the back. That's when it hit me. I didn't belong anymore. But I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I held my breath, watched the ceremony unfold, and kept the smile on my face. What happened next? That's the part no one saw coming. If you've ever felt excluded or disrespected, drop a comment below and tell me what you did about it. The moment Emily threw me out was the moment I realized that all the years of hard work, all the sacrifices I'd made for my family, meant nothing to her. "You're too poor for my wedding," she had screamed at me in front of everyone. My own son said nothing. It wasn't just that she humiliated me in front of the town. It was that she tried to take away the one thing that meant everything to me, my family. I didn't fight back. I just smiled. I turned, walked away, and made one phone call. Want to see what happened next? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next part of the story. Trust me, you don't want to be left behind. The thing is, I knew something that Emily didn't. I wasn't a man to be trifled with, and though she thought she'd won, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Emily had no idea who she was dealing with. 30 days from that moment, she would wish she'd never crossed me. And Jason, though, he would learn the hard way that family always comes first. But that's a story for another time. The day I had been dreading finally came. The day Emily showed her true colors. I had spent my whole life protecting my family, doing everything I could to provide for them. My marriage to Margie wasn't perfect, but we built something solid. We weren't rich, but we had each other, and that meant everything to me. I worked hard for what we had, and I did it for my son, for Jason. But I didn't know that Emily's idea of family was so different from mine. She didn't want to build. She didn't want to grow alongside us. She wanted to tear down what we had, replace it with something she could control. And on that fateful day, she did just that. The ceremony was about to begin. The guests were seated, the soft hum of chatter filling the air as I stood in the back of the church watching my son, my pride, my boy, standing at the altar like he dreamed about since he was young. But there was an unfamiliar heaviness in the air, something that made my chest tighten. I couldn't shake it. Then Emily entered. The doors opened, and the soft light from the stained glass windows hit her. She looked stunning. There's no denying that. Her smile lit up the room, and Jason's face softened as he looked at her. I could see the joy in his eyes, the happiness that she had brought him. But there was something else in that smile. It wasn't just love, it was power. She wasn't just his bride, she was taking control. As Emily walked down the aisle, I couldn't help but notice how everyone's eyes were on her, admiring her. It was her day. Everything was her day. And then it happened. I was standing near the back of the church, watching her approach, when I saw her eyes lock with mine. For a moment, everything went silent. The music faded. The people faded. All that was left was the venom in her eyes. She stopped mid-step. Everyone noticed. She took a deep breath and, with a sneer on her face, pointed directly at me. "You're too poor for my wedding," she shouted. The words sliced through the room, freezing the air. My son's face dropped. Jason didn't move. He didn't say a word. I stood there stunned. Everyone was looking at me now. The crowd was silent, waiting for me to respond. But what could I say? What could I do? Her voice cut through again, louder this time, more furious. "I don't want you here. Get out! This is a celebration of us, not you!" I couldn't believe it. Not you. Those words echoed in my mind. I looked around. The eyes of the guests were all on me, judging me. There was no escape from the weight of their gaze. I wanted to defend myself, to scream that she had no right to humiliate me like this. But I stayed silent. I had been humiliated, yes, but there was something deeper, something colder about the way she did it. This wasn't just a public embarrassment. This was her trying to destroy everything I held dear. I turned to Jason, my son, expecting him to step in, to speak up for me. He didn't. He just stood there, eyes down, not meeting mine. I could see it, the shame in his eyes. His loyalty had already shifted, and I could feel it. This wasn't just Emily anymore. This was my son, the boy I had raised, betraying me in front of everyone. And there it was. The moment I realized she had him. She had my son, and she didn't care who she crushed to keep him. She had already started to tear our family apart, and I was nothing more than collateral damage. Have you ever had someone you loved betray you like this? Ever felt the weight of their silence more than their words? Drop a comment and tell me how you handled it. I didn't fight back. I didn't shout or plead. I just smiled. I had to. "Fine," I said, quietly, my voice steady, controlled. "If that's how it's going to be." I turned away from the altar, my heart heavy with the pain of rejection. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel the eyes of the room following me, but I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the pity in their faces. I didn't want to see my son's disappointment. As I reached the door, I glanced over my shoulder. Jason was still standing there, frozen. His face was unreadable, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to stop me, to tell me it wasn't true, that I wasn't the problem. But he didn't. Emily had already won, and it hurt like hell. I walked to my car, my hands shaking, but my mind already moving in a different direction. I knew the path ahead. The road to revenge was long, but I was ready to take it. I had been wronged, humiliated, and disrespected, but I wasn't going to let her have the last word. I made one call, just one, and from that moment on, Emily's world would never be the same. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one blending into the next. I went through the motions, wake up, stare out the window, sit at my desk, watch the clock tick by. But inside, I was dying. I'd always thought I had my life together, that I could handle whatever came my way. I had worked for every inch of what I had, and I prided myself on being a man who stood tall no matter what. But Emily's words and Jason's silence shattered me. I had been through plenty of hard times before, but this was different. This wasn't just about a business deal gone wrong or an old friend betraying me. This was my family. This was my son. Jason, my own flesh and blood, had stood there and said nothing. He had watched his future wife humiliate me in front of everyone. He hadn't even tried to defend me, hadn't even given me a look that said, "It's okay, Dad, I'm still on your side." No, it was as if I no longer existed in his world. I wasn't important anymore. And that hurt more than I could ever put into words. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I lost 15 pounds in a week, my clothes hanging loose around my frame, my energy drained. I spent my nights tossing and turning, replaying the moment over and over in my head. It wasn't just the shame of being kicked out of the wedding, it was the feeling of being replaced. I had spent years building up my relationship with Jason, putting in the work to make sure he knew he was loved and respected. And now it felt like everything I had worked for, everything we had built, meant nothing. I didn't know how to fix it. How could I? I'd always been the one to solve problems, to step in when things went wrong. But this wasn't a broken fence or a leaky roof. This was my family, and I had no idea how to fix it. Have you ever felt completely powerless, like everything you'd worked for was slipping away? Comment below if you've been through something similar. I want to hear your story. I didn't leave the house for days. I didn't go to the senior center where I volunteered, didn't stop by the garden to tend to the flowers I'd planted in the backyard. I just sat. I stared out the window. My thoughts were dark, heavy. It felt like I couldn't breathe, like the weight of the world was pressing down on my chest. It was during one of those long nights, just before dawn, when I sat up suddenly and realized something that changed everything. This was the moment I understood, the moment I realized that I didn't have to lie down and let Emily, and Jason by extension, win. I had been sitting there, wallowing in self-pity for far too long. I had always been the one who could pick myself back up, and it was time I did it again. I grabbed my phone and called the one person who could make all of this go away, Jack. Jack wasn't just any old friend. He was someone I'd helped out back in the day, a businessman who, years ago, was on the verge of losing it all. I'd stepped in, offered a loan when no one else would, and helped him turn his life around. In return, he owed me, and he knew it. I dialed his number, and it rang for a long moment before he picked up. "Richie," he said, his voice low but familiar. "What's up? It's late. You all right?" "I need a favor," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "A big one." Jack didn't hesitate. "You got it. What do you need?" Do you have a person in your life who's always had your back? A connection that you could call on when everything seemed lost? Comment below if you've ever called in a favor or maybe needed one yourself. I didn't explain everything over the phone. I didn't need to. Jack knew me well enough to understand the gravity in my voice, the urgency in my words. "You want to hit her where it hurts, don't you?" he asked. I could hear the smile in his voice, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who understood the game we were about to play. This wasn't about getting back at Emily for the sake of it. This was about showing her that no one, not even someone like her, could cross me without paying the price. "Exactly," I said, my voice cold now. "She thinks she can walk all over me. She thinks money and power can buy everything. Well, she's about to learn a lesson." The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls and meetings. Jack worked his magic behind the scenes, pulling strings, digging into Emily's family's wealth, their shady business dealings, and their connections. I didn't need to know the specifics. I just needed to know one thing. It would work. The moment I received the first piece of leverage, I knew things were about to change. Emily had no idea what was coming. Have you ever taken back control after feeling powerless? What was the turning point for you? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe because you won't believe how this story ends. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night, the first of many sleepless nights to come, staring at the documents Jack had sent me.
evidence of the shady business deals her family had kept hidden for years. Money laundering, corruption, the kinds of things that could bring everything crashing down. For the first time since the wedding, I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't over. I wasn't done. Emily had made a grave mistake, and now I was ready to make her regret it. And Jason? He would understand soon enough. He would realize that the family he had turned his back on was worth more than any woman or any amount of money he could ever have. But I couldn't focus on that now. What mattered was that Emily was about to be exposed, and when that happened, everything she'd built, everything she thought she was, would come crumbling down.
I had a choice to make. Every day I wrestled with it. I couldn't ignore the way things had spiraled out of control, the hurt, the anger, the betrayal. I had been humiliated in front of my son, my community, and I had let it slide. At first, I thought I could just walk away, let it all go and move on with my life. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let her get away with it. Not this time. Emily had gone too far. She had crossed a line, and worse, she had dragged my son into her mess. Jason, the boy I'd spent my life raising, now stood with her, silently allowing her to tear everything apart. But the truth is, I didn't just want revenge. No, what I wanted was justice. I wanted Emily to understand the consequences of her actions, to feel the weight of what she had done, not just to me, but to Jason too. I didn't want to just get even. I wanted her to see that family wasn't something you could throw away when it was inconvenient. I wanted her to know that no amount of money or power could protect her from the truth. I sat in my old leather chair, the one that had seen me through many sleepless nights over the years. The faint sound of the wind outside scratched against the window, and for a moment I almost felt the silence inside my head, like everything was calm, everything was under control. But deep down, I knew it wasn't, not by a long shot. I thought back to the last few weeks, to how everything had changed after the wedding, how people had started talking, how Emily's perfect little world was crumbling piece by piece. The articles, the leaks, the whispers in town, I had planned it all, piece by piece with the help of Jack. The press was already onto her, and the town had started questioning everything they thought they knew about her. But still, I hesitated. Was it right? Was I going too far? It wasn't like me to want revenge. Hell, it wasn't like me to even think about revenge. But this wasn't just some petty squabble. This was my family. And Emily had done more than humiliate me. She had tried to erase everything I had built, everything I had worked for, all in the name of power. I thought of Jason again, my son. The boy I raised with my own hands, the boy who used to sit beside me in that very chair, watching football games, working on the farm, just being there. He'd never been afraid to tell me anything, never afraid to ask for advice. But now, he was silent. He was lost in her world, lost in the life she had crafted for him, a life I could no longer be a part of. Have you ever had to choose between doing what's easy and doing what's right? Comment below. Have you ever been in a position where you had to make the hard choice? The decision had been made. I wasn't walking away. I wasn't going to just sit back and let Emily destroy everything I had built. She needed to understand the consequences of her actions, and I was going to make sure she did. I pulled out the documents Jack had sent me, evidence of everything, the shady deals, the lies, the corruption, all of it. I looked at them again, carefully. The truth was right there, staring me in the face. I had the upper hand now, and Emily, she had no idea what was coming. I could already hear her voice in my head, the way she had screamed at me that day, the venom in her tone, the arrogance in her eyes. You don't belong here. Well, I was about to show her just how wrong she was. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about showing Jason the importance of family, of loyalty. It was about reminding him that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how far someone might fall, family should always come first. I wasn't just going to take Emily down. I was going to take back what was mine, my family, my son. And if that meant exposing her for the fraud she was, so be it. But I had to move carefully.
I couldn't just come out swinging. No, I needed a strategy, something more than just dropping a bomb. I had to make sure that when it hit hard. I needed her to feel the weight of her own actions, to realize that nothing, not her money, not her family's influence, could shield her from the truth. What would you do in my shoes? Would you go for the easy option, or would you take a stand like I did? Comment below. I want to know how you'd handle the situation. I picked up the phone again. This time I wasn't calling Jack. I was calling someone else. Someone who had been on the outside, watching everything unfold. Someone who had information that could completely turn the tables. "I need you to do something for me," I said when they picked up. "I need you to dig deeper. Find everything you can on her. I want everything. The dirtier, the better. She's about to learn that the truth has a way of coming out." The voice on the other end of the line was quiet, but I could hear the smile in it. "I'll get to work on it right away, Richie." What do you think will happen next? Will the truth come out? Do you think Emily has any chance of winning this battle? Drop a comment below and make sure to subscribe. This is just the beginning. I hung up the phone, my heart racing. I had made the decision. It was time to put everything in motion. Emily thought she had everything under control, but she was wrong. She had no idea how far I was willing to go to make her pay for what she did. Jason would understand, eventually. Maybe not now, but soon enough. And Emily, well, she would be begging for forgiveness before it was all over. The storm was coming, and Emily had no idea it was headed straight for her.
It's funny how quickly things can change when you have the right pieces in place. One phone call, one connection, one tiny spark, and suddenly the world starts to shift in your favor. But that's the thing about revenge. It's never about raw emotion. It's not about charging in blind with fists swinging. No, the best revenge is the kind that's planned carefully, the kind that hits when the time is just right, the kind that takes your enemies by surprise, leaving them with no way to defend themselves. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't feeling the sting of humiliation that I'd felt the night I was kicked out of my own son's wedding. That sting had faded, replaced by something colder, something much more dangerous. Now I was focused. The plan was in motion, and nothing was going to stop it. The first step was securing the evidence. I'd made the call to Jack, but I wasn't relying on just him. I had connections, people in places Emily would never think to look. I called in favors from old friends, colleagues who knew how to dig deeper than any journalist ever could. People who understood how to leverage the right documents, the right information to bring someone like Emily down. And they were more than willing to help. You see, Emily wasn't as untouchable as she thought. Her wealth, her family's name, her perfect little world, it all hid a truth that I knew would destroy her. But the thing about hiding the truth is that it always comes out, and when it does, it doesn't just sting, it scorches everything in its path. The first piece of the puzzle arrived in the form of a phone call. "You were right, Richie, we've got her," Jack said, his voice steady but tinged with excitement. "I've got the records, bank statements, private transactions, investments that don't match up with what she's been claiming. She's been laundering money through that non-profit of hers. It's all there." The words hit me like a jolt of electricity. This was it, the smoking gun, the thing that would bring everything crashing down. Emily's perfect world was about to unravel, and I was going to be the one holding the strings. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the pile of documents Jack had sent over. It was more than just financial records. There were phone records, pictures from shady meetings with people who had no business being in the town of Hartford. It all painted a picture of someone who had built their life on lies, someone who was willing to betray anyone and anything to get ahead. I smiled. Emily thought she could kick me to the curb, humiliate me in front of everyone, and just keep going like nothing happened. She was wrong. She didn't realize that nothing in her life was as safe as she thought. The second step was taking that evidence to the media. I didn't just want to destroy her life in private. I wanted to make sure the whole world knew what kind of person she was.
I spent the next few days making calls to reporters, media outlets who thrived on stories like this. I knew how to work the system, how to give just enough to get them interested, how to make sure the right questions got asked. And then I waited. The first article was just a taste of what was to come. Local woman's nonprofit under investigation for possible money laundering. It didn't sound like much, but it was enough to get people talking. Emily's family's name was dragged through the mud, and the town, the very people she'd tried to impress with her wealth and status, started to question her. I watched it unfold from my living room, the satisfaction creeping up my spine. It wasn't just the media attention, it was the way Emily's perfect little world was slowly crumbling, bit by bit. The more the story spread, the more people in town started to talk. But that was just the beginning. A few days after the article hit, Emily called Jason. I could hear her voice from where I was sitting, speaking in that fake, honeyed tone she used when she was trying to manipulate him. Jason, though, didn't sound convinced. I overheard him saying things I never thought I'd hear him say. "I don't know, Emily. This is getting out of hand. Maybe we should just keep quiet and let this blow over," Jason said, his voice tight with uncertainty. The realization hit me like a slap. Emily was already doubting her. She had started to lose him. And that was a victory for me. A small one, sure, but one step closer to the ultimate prize, exposing her for the fraud she was. But Emily wasn't ready to give up just yet. She fought back hard. In a desperate attempt to salvage her image, she organized a press conference. She stood in front of the cameras, smiling through clenched teeth, her hands shaking as she tried to convince everyone the allegations were false. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that her nonprofit was just misreported by the media. And for a moment, it looked like it might work. Her family's wealth and influence were enough to sway a few people, to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was still Emily Walters, the golden girl, the one everyone thought was untouchable. But I knew better. The truth was out there now, and it was only a matter of time before it would crush her. Have you ever watched someone get so close to their victory for everything to fall apart? Comment below. Do you think Emily can win this, or is she finished? As the days passed, I watched her world collapse more and more. The press was relentless. People she had once called friends turned their backs on her. Even Jason was starting to pull away, and I could see it in his eyes when he looked at her. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had regained control. I wasn't just watching from the sidelines anymore. I was part of the game. And Emily? She didn't even see the full extent of what was coming for her. Stay tuned, because what happens next will shock you. Emily may think she's in control, but trust me, she's about to learn just how wrong she is. Don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens when everything she's built comes crashing down.
Emily stood before the press, her back straight, her hands clasped tightly together. The cameras flashed and the reporters shouted questions at her. She smiled through it all, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emily began, her voice confident, practiced. "The allegations against me and my family are completely false. This is nothing more than a smear campaign orchestrated by those who wish to see us fall. We have every intention of proving our innocence, and we will fight this through legal channels." The reporters scribbled down her words, some nodding along, others skeptical. But I could see the facade. She was trying to convince them, trying to regain control of a narrative that was slipping through her fingers like sand. As I watched from my living room, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Emily had no idea what was coming. She thought this press conference would be her turning point, her chance to prove that the story was a lie, that everything was just a misunderstanding. But the truth was already out there, and it was too late for her to stop it. Her perfect image had already been tarnished by the leaks, the articles, the whispers. The more she tried to defend herself, the more the cracks in her armor showed. She was losing control, and the public was starting to see the woman behind the mask.
A week after the press conference, I saw something unexpected. A friend of Emily's, someone I knew from the senior center, came to me with a piece of information that made my stomach churn with satisfaction. "She's been meeting with the press, Richie, trying to save face," Sarah told me, her voice hushed. "But here's the thing, she's losing her touch. I overheard her at the salon yesterday. She's terrified, and Jason, he's starting to pull away. You know, he hasn't been showing up to his appointments. I think he's finally starting to see through her act." At that moment, I knew it was working. Emily thought she was still in control, still the one pulling all the strings, but every time she tried to patch up the holes, more would open up. Jason was starting to see the truth, and that was everything. But Emily didn't give up. No, she doubled down. At a fundraising gala, she was back at it, making speeches, shaking hands, pretending like nothing was wrong. I watched from the comfort of my recliner, shaking my head. She was trying so hard to regain what she had lost, and yet it was slipping further and further out of her reach. She laughed too loud, smiled too wide. Her words were sharp and rehearsed. It was all an act. And what made it worse, the people around her didn't see it. They bought into the persona she'd crafted, believing the story she told them. For a moment, I thought she might actually pull it off. She was good at putting on that mask of confidence, the one that made people believe she was untouchable, the one that convinced them she was still the golden girl, the one everyone admired and respected. But then came the phone call. It came at 10 a.m. one Monday, just a few days after the gala. I was going through some paperwork when my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Jack. I got her. The money laundering accounts. The family's bank was under investigation for several large transfers. Their names were hidden, but I found the records. Your hunch was right. She's been using her nonprofit as a front for money laundering. I couldn't help but smile. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to end well for her. The media had been eating it up, but now this was real. She couldn't talk her way out of this one. The evidence was airtight, and soon the world would see her for who she really was. Emily wasn't done yet. She fought back harder, this time hiring a team of lawyers to shut everything down. She sent cease and desist letters to anyone who had mentioned her name in connection with the story. She even tried to bribe the local news station into dropping the story. She was pulling out all the stops, but every move she made only dug her deeper into the hole. She had been so used to being the one in control, the one who dictated the rules, the one who walked away from any mess she created. She thought money and power could shield her, but now she was in full damage control mode, scrambling to hold on to whatever she could. But what she didn't know was that the truth had already taken root. The leaks had spread like wildfire, and the more she tried to suppress them, the worse it got. It didn't take long for Jason to notice the change in Emily. The phone calls, the whispers in town, the sudden pressure that weighed down on her. He started pulling away more and more, his visits home growing less frequent. I could see it in his eyes the next time we spoke. He wasn't the same man who had stood at the altar, ready to marry Emily. "Dad, I don't know what to do anymore," he admitted one evening, his voice shaky. "She's been lying to me. I don't even know who she really is anymore." That was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment my son realized he had been deceived, that the woman he had loved wasn't who she seemed to be. Emily was losing him, and it was beautiful. Have you ever seen someone who thought they were untouchable fall apart? How did it feel? Drop a comment below. Do you think Emily can come back from this, or is it all over for her? The cracks in Emily's armor were becoming more and more visible. She was no longer the woman she pretended to be, and with each new revelation, she was getting closer to the inevitable. The world was starting to see her for who she really was, and I was just getting started. What do you think will happen next? Is Emily finally going to get what's coming to her, or can she still save herself? Comment below and make sure you're subscribed to see how the story ends. You won't believe what happens next.
It was almost like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You could see it coming, feel it in your gut, but there was no stopping it. And when it finally happened, when everything Emily had built came crashing down, it wasn't the satisfying explosion I thought it would be. It was quiet, controlled, but it was just as powerful. It started with a phone call, a simple one. Jack had come through with everything, the bank records, the connections, the undeniable proof that Emily's empire was built on a foundation of lies. And when the truth hit the press, it hit hard. The first headline to break was the nail in her coffin, local businesswoman linked to massive money laundering scheme. Within hours, the story went viral, social media erupted, and the phone calls came pouring in. Emily's life, the carefully crafted image she'd spent years building, was in ruins. But it wasn't just a media storm, it was the moment I had been waiting for, the confrontation. I arranged to meet Emily in person. It wasn't something I had planned on at first. I was content to watch her crumble from a distance, but I needed to see her face when she realized just how deep she had fallen. It was a late afternoon when I walked into the cafe where we'd agreed to meet. Emily was sitting at a table by the window, her eyes darting nervously around the room. She had that same fake smile plastered on her face, but it didn't fool anyone anymore. When she saw me, the color drained from her face. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching her squirm. "Richie, I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said, her voice cracking slightly as she reached for her cup of coffee, her hands shaking. "Oh, I think you did," I replied calmly, sitting down across from her. "But you didn't think the consequences would catch up with you, did you?" She looked away, biting her lip, trying to gather herself. "This is all a mistake," she insisted, her voice rising in desperation. "I've been trying to fix it. I swear I—" "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You don't get to fix this. You don't get to walk away from this one. You thought you could humiliate me, tear my family apart, and get away with it. You were wrong. You had no idea who you were dealing with." As the press storm raged on, the first domino fell, and it was bigger than I had anticipated. The more the media uncovered, the more the pieces of Emily's life started to unravel. And when one piece falls, it has a way of pulling everything else down with it. The nonprofit she'd so proudly boasted about was a front for laundering money. Her family's connections were tied to several shady deals that, once exposed, became the foundation of a full-scale investigation. But it didn't stop there. Jason was left to watch as everything he had once admired about her crumble before his eyes. The people who had once called her a hero, a philanthropist, now turned on her, demanding answers. And that's when it hit him. The man who had stood silently by her side during the wedding, the boy I had raised, was now on the outside, looking in, and the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. "I should have seen it, Dad. I should have known," Jason said to me one night, his voice raw with regret. "She wasn't the person I thought she was." He had realized it, finally. Emily's grip on him had slipped, and in its place, the truth was slowly but surely taking hold. For the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of the son I used to know. By the time the second article came out, the one that revealed Emily's family's involvement in money laundering, it was too late for her to save face. The world had turned on her, and there was nothing she could do about it. The media coverage became relentless. It wasn't just the local newspapers anymore. Now the national outlets were picking up the story. The phone calls, the interviews, the investigations, all of it pointed back to Emily. She was the one who had deceived so many, the one who had manipulated the system for her own gain. And in the midst of it all, Jason finally came to see me. We sat down together, no words needed. He knew what had to be done. "I've got the paperwork, Dad." He slid a folder across the table. It was the final nail in her coffin. He had turned on her, just like I knew he would. The documents proved it all, that Emily had been siphoning money from the very charity she had claimed to run, transferring it into secret accounts.
Her own family, her so-called support system, had been in on it, and when the truth hit the courts, Emily had nowhere left to hide. One by one, the consequences began to fall. The authorities swooped in, freezing her assets and launching a full investigation into the nonprofit she had built her empire on. The media frenzy only intensified. The more the public learned, the more her reputation crumbled. Friends, colleagues, and business partners all distanced themselves from her. But the most satisfying part? Watching her beg for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, Richie. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, just let me fix it." It was too late for apologies. She had crossed a line, and now she was paying the price. And Jason? He was still reeling from the betrayal, but he had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that family, loyalty, and honesty meant more than any amount of money or power. Where are they now? Emily? Well, her life now consists of waiting for the legal consequences to catch up with her. She's still facing multiple charges, her wealth evaporating as fast as it came. No one believes her now. No one trusts her. Jason, he's still working through the mess she left behind, but I know he's learning. The hard way, but he's learning. We've been talking more lately. Slowly, we're rebuilding the relationship that Emily almost destroyed. And me? I'm back where I belong. I'm rebuilding my own sense of peace. There's something satisfying about knowing you fought for what's right and won. Have you ever watched someone fall from grace just like Emily? How did it feel when they got what they deserved? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.